By the way, I have always been a legit fan of your hairstyle. Like since I was a kid, I always thought the girls that had the undercut were like the coolest girls that ever walked. Like they kind of intimidated me a little bit because they had that extra boldness to them.
That is true. Yeah, I've got a little bit of that warrior spirit in me.
I can see it from here. Well, welcome to the Tragedy Academy, a show created to bridge societal divides in a judgment-free zone using candor and humor. My name is Jay. Today, you heard Crystal Cassidy, CEO and founder of SoulPod, mobile app for spiritual wellness, biotech innovator with 2 decades in pharmaceuticals, Reiki, breathwork, meditation guide. You got quite the resume. How are you doing today, Crystal?
I'm doing so well. Happy to be here with you, Jay.
I'm super excited to have you. I like when you find people on your path that have a marriage of 2 different sides of the coin. And it's very rare because a lot of people can be pulled in by the knowledge of the other and get ego attached to it and not allow themselves to see what the other side is as well. Which in my mind, I've always thought spirituality and science were simply 2 different descriptions for the same existence.
I totally agree. I think they're just 2 different languages and 2 different ways to understand the same thing.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So CEO and founder of SoulPod, like you mentioned. But I have really 2 sides to my coin, which is the science side. I have a degree in biochemistry. I worked in pharmaceutical development, genomic diagnostics, cancer research, some really cutting edge stuff in the Bay Area here in California. And then I have the spiritual side. I studied martial arts growing up for about 15 years. I traveled internationally competing in the martial arts space. I taught for a number of years. So it was a huge part of my life. And that's really where I picked up meditation. And that was my entry point at a young age, around 12 years old, into understanding the mind. At first, I think I was really fascinated by if I could find this spaciousness in my mind, my outer performance would be, I could find that flow. And that was very interesting to me. And then as I got older, I discovered meditation opens the doors to...
That's an amazing insight for such a young age.
Yeah. I was an odd kid.
No, I absolutely love it. Odd kids make the coolest adults.
I agree. I was that girl. I was the martial artist. And I was really fascinated with the mind pretty young, but then discovered that meditation, yes, it helps you with mindfulness and focus and finding flow, but there's a whole nother realm of consciousness that opens up. And that's what I started to get into as I got older.
Meditation practice has been bastardized here in the Western world, right? What it actually impacts, how it can change your life, and what it's ultimately used for. I like to think that the anxiety, depression, and small ins and outs of daily life can get soothed by meditation, but that's really just scratching the surface. Understanding of reality as a whole comes from within. You live from the inside out, not the outside in. People just don't realize it. They live reversed in their mind. And once you find that you have a practice where you can be with self alone and look at the bigger picture, you really start to see concepts of time, concepts of characters, and willingness to participate, and weird just idiosyncrasies in everything around you. starts to open up. It's a really fun process. It can also be terrifying too.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that. It's a very I think there's many different entry points into meditation, so I kind of honor all of the different ways people may get into it. But you're totally right. It's you quickly discover that the more aligned you are internally, the more you have that relationship with you can call it your inner being, your highest self, source, God, whatever you want to call it. But the more you develop that relationship, it's interesting in that surrender, in that relationship to the inner self, your outer world starts to change too. And you realize like, okay, maybe it's not the pushing and the hustle, which in Western world is definitely more highly valued than the inner work and creating from a place of centeredness rather than from a place of stress and forcing.
Mm.
And that, that takes some practice to kind of find that trust within yourself. Um, but yeah, there's also, like you said, it's beautiful, it's glorious, and then it's also terrifying, like the
It
spiritual
pulls the
journey.
very string that holds the tapestry of your mind and unravels it. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's
Yeah.
slow. And to put yourself in the face of that is takes strength in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
challenging the status quo. Nobody wants you to look inside, they want you to look outside because that keeps you consuming.
Oh,
Right? So to go
absolutely.
against the
Yeah.
status quo and look in really opens up a lot of doors from inside. I like to
Yeah.
imagine myself when I meditate as well. Started about
Mhm.
6 years ago, and it just became a
Okay.
fundamental aspect of my entire mental health, my life, the way I pursue things. And for me, I don't have the ability to visualize, which I know seems
Mm.
odd to a lot of people. But more recently, they've kind of come up with the explanation for, or the fact that there is a phenomenon. It's called aphantasia. And
Okay.
basically, I lack a mind's eye, right?
Mm.
So for me, I always had a lot of trouble with, hey, imagine you're on a beach and there's a palm tree and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sure. I thought everybody was just hypothetically coming up with some weird, thought. But I didn't know that you guys had like a movie theater in there that you were sitting back, reclining and watching with popcorn. So I just thought my entire life, I didn't realize. And I read this article on an architect that lost his mind's eye under anesthetic because of a
Mm.
routine surgery, woke up and was no longer able to see all of the
Mhm.
things he could see. And it crippled him, obviously. But for
Mm.
people that do have it, I think that it opens a different door into meditation because I couldn't see, but I found
Mhm.
myself in a room of feeling.
Yes.
And for me,
Yes. Yes.
meditation was allowing myself not to grab a hold to any of
Mm.
the feelings in the surrounding circle and existing with them at the same time. Like I had to
Love that.
imagine that, right? And just sit in it and let it go past me. Let it go. I like to say, have lunch with my lion.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a difference between visualization and sensing, which I think is what you're talking about. It's that experience of feeling rather than visualizing in the mind's eye. So
Mm,
with students, I oftentimes will play with different levers to connect. And one of them is visualization for sure, but one of them is also sensing. Can you sense the space at the very base of your spine? And that's the feeling, that's the connection, but it's also helping you. Can you sense the space around your spine, outside of your body? Like that ability to sense and connect and explore with your consciousness in that way is just as powerful, I think, as visualization. But yeah, you also talk about the courage that it takes, and I think that's underappreciated and not talked about as much in the spiritual development circles, which is that you'll come up against yourself. You'll come up against parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed, that you're
mm,
maybe a little bit surprised by. I did a 4-hour meditation once and my body was fighting me in ways that I didn't expect. I felt like I was having a heart attack. There's the physical difficulty you have to work through. There's the mental, obviously the thoughts, which
Mm.
many of us are familiar with. There's the emotions. So it requires a degree of intention and courage to move through that. And it is challenging at times, but so worth it. Because on the
Mildly
other
a
side of
clockwork
that, it's
orange with
huge.
your worst fears.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you just have to take it in with your eyes wide
Yeah.
open
Yeah. You
until you
just got
just
to
don't
dive
care
in
anymore.
and,
And you're
and
like,
trust that
okay,
you will be,
let's move on.
held. You will be
Desensitization,
caught.
if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
nothing's going to happen.
You're safe. Ultimately, you're safe. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So someone like yourself has 2 years in the pharmaceutical industry, working in genetics,
Mm,
studying the human genome, DNA, getting to see the art and the very building blocks that create us while walking a spiritual path.
hmm
And I would like to understand, or maybe you can share with us what it looks like to have almost like two paths next to each other where you step on each stone to confirm itself. And I wonder what it would be like to, because I know me, I'm skeptical. I'm the inner skeptic
Yeah.
before I was spiritual in any way, shape, or form. So
Yep.
I have to check blocks and nobody can tell me what I'm going to find out. I absolutely despise that. I won't believe what I figure out at the end because you tainted it, right? I'm super weird
Mm-hmm.
that way. So I'm
No, that makes
curious.
that makes sense.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking you may have a mind similar to that because in order to stay on both sides of the path, you kind of have to reconcile things. Can you tell me
Mm,
what that's like looking at, chakras, kundalini energy, and then looking at a double helix, right? In the same day?
mm-hmm.
That is not something that most people do in their entire life. So it
Mm-hmm.
creates a very unique lens with which to view reality and life through. And I want to get to the root of that and see what it is that you saw. What are the
Mm.
correlations?
It's such a great question. That's such a cool way to frame it. Um, there's a few things there. I think on the science side, the more you work in science and biochemistry and genomics, I mean, there's a lot that we know. There's a lot that we have discovered. But you also, as you get deeper and deeper into something, and I think this is the same for spirituality, you will start to realize how much you don't know. And you get further and you're like,
Mm.
there's so much here. The way that our bodies operate, we're still on the precipice of a lot of that, from neuroscience to um, the our foundational genomics to our endocrine system, our nervous system. Like there's so much that we're still discovering and will be discovering for a while. And so for me, and this is the same way that I think about spirituality, that means that there's so much possibility. So for me, both on the science side and on
Mm.
the spirituality side, I really stay connected to the awesome, truly awe-inspiring discovery and exploration that requires curiosity, both on the science side and how we explore. How is this gene? How does it work? What is it influenced by? Um, and in spirituality, it's all for me been first person experience. I had a Kundalini awakening and I didn't know what Kundalini was. I didn't really have a connection with my chakra system until it happened. And now I have a direct
Interesting.
experience, and in science, we know direct experience or observation is a data point. And so you start to collect these data points in your spiritual journey that you can then replicate that experience. You can see what influences activating your Kundalini or not. So every day in my practice, I still view it on the spiritual side as being explorative. And I view myself as a spiritual scientist. I'm testing things. I'm seeing, what influences what. And that's the same thing that we do in science.
I think that's beautifully explained. The the word kundalini confuses a lot of people. It
Yeah.
has like all of these memes and now TikToks that'll spin by that say like all of these like, if you do this, then you will receive this. And I don't know, if you don't forward, it's gonna be like chainmail, and then you'll have bad
Oh, I
luck
know.
or
I
some
know.
garbage.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm only familiar with that word for one reason and one reason only, because I had
Mm.
to go look up what the hell had happened to me. I've
Same.
never talked about this on the show
Yeah.
ever talked about it, because when I started meditating, I had left the corporate world and I was on my knees. Like, I feel like in
Mm.
order to plant a tree and to grow, you have to be on your knees. Like, it's just a
Mm.
requirement. You have to
I love
shed
that.
the old in
Yeah.
order to grow something new. And for me, it was meditation. It was, going to the gym and then meditation combined. And when I say meditation, I went down the rabbit hole. I've done the 4 hours. I've done the, lock yourself in the darkest room possible with zero light entry and stay there with your eyes open in sort of a deprivation scenario, just because I needed to know what
Mm.
meditation was. Where does this go? But initially what had happened to me, and I can't believe I'm talking about this on the show, right?
Oh, I'm so
But
excited.
right, I'd meditated for probably 8 months, close to a year at that point. And I was starting to feel movements
Hmm.
inside of me, and I didn't like it. I basically jumped up, ran inside the house, and thought my Southern Baptist grandfather was right about everything I ever believed. Right? That's
Yeah.
how it struck me. That's why I say it's terrifying, because if you do put in the time,
Yeah.
there's going to be a threshold that you have to cross, and it's going to
Mm.
require you to believe or have a certain amount of faith in what is going on around you. And I firmly believe you cannot be led through it, that it's got to
Mm.
be yours to trip over when it happens. And I think anybody's capable of it. And I don't know what the F it means. All I knew is at the time was initially, I just started having a lot of movement throughout my body. My hands would start
Mm.
moving. I would start circular moving. And I was like, oh my God, it's the Antichrist or whatever in my mind. I'm like, I have the serpent. That's the first thing I'm thinking, because it was demonized, obviously.
Yes.
A Southern
Yes.
Baptist kid has heard everything about the serpent, right?
Yeah.
Yet it's on the medical staff, which that really blows my mind, right? Hmm.
And I know.
So imagine that, right?
Yeah.
We don't like what's in front of us, and we don't even like that we give ourselves clues. That said, I sat there. We do.
Yeah.
I decided to push through it, right? And I
Mm.
decided to
Hmm.
continue with the practice, and I decided to continue to sit down. And I think I mentioned this in the last episode. Meditation is where I found the word faith, right? I
Hmm.
didn't believe anybody that ever told me I have faith in whatever. And I'm like, bullshit.
Right.
I'm like, I can
Yeah.
see in your eyes, you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And you're just saying this word so
Mm.
that you think you can slip through some kind of pearly gates later or whatever weirdness you're trying to sell me. Right. That's the way
Yeah.
I'm interpreting it. But faith for me was the first time I used my breath as an actual metronome, and I didn't breathe for myself.
Mm.
The moment that
Beautiful.
I didn't arrogantly breathe, which is what most of us will do if you're told to watch your breath. Initially, you will take it over,
Hmm.
right? And it's so weird that we do that. It's weird that we say catch your breath. Like, what the hell else were you going to do, right? That said, for me, it was a holding of the breath for about
Mm.
30 seconds and a release and a natural inhale, and then let it take over, and then
Hmm.
actually watch it. And then it occurred to me, I do have faith. I have faith in the return of breath.
Mm. Beautiful.
It
Yes.
allowed me to start a foundation for what, will be what it is. But about Kundalini, for me, after meditation, I was out walking my dog and getting ready to go to the gym. And the only way I can describe this situation was 1 second I didn't know something. The second after, I knew something completely different. And I knew what was
Mm,
true, if that
hmm.
makes sense. And I'm not
It
saying like
does.
some
Yeah.
kind of genius download or whatever, but it was like somebody grabbed the curtain and ripped it open and allowed me to see behind it for a second and come back out and then realize the words that I could put on it at the time were everybody is mentally ill, right? Like
Mm,
humanity. And then I was like,
hmm.
no, it's weirder than that. Everybody is playing a pseudo game of make believe.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
have perpetuated it over time. And this is why I like your duality, in that I believe that we suffer from a genetic and hereditary insanity the further we've gotten from who we really are. Like, it's a
Mm.
combined
A
effort.
forgetfulness. Yeah.
It is a willingness to forget,
Hmm.
a willingness to forget. And I'm sorry I jumped on that. I just never talked about it before, but it changed my
Mm,
perspective on everything, allowed me to forgive, allowed me to forget, allowed me to just walk through things and go, well, it's not your fault. Like, if you're
mm.
born on a roller coaster, how can you be in control of the turns? Right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
yours.
Hmm.
And last time I checked, nobody remembers where they came from.
Mm.
They just woke up on the ride. And if that's the case, then until they know that they're on a ride, I kind of got to give them a bye.
Yeah. I love that. I love that analogy. I really appreciate you sharing um, that experience because, when we have these spiritual moments where something opens up and it moves from a belief or a philosophy or an inkling into a knowing, I find that process of moving from belief into knowing part of the mystical experience and the embodied experience. And you've brought something that was kind of out here, unmanifest, the field, whatever you want to call it. And you brought more of that wholeness, that
Mm.
awakening into this dimension of being human, which in my mind is what the awakening process is all about. It's not necessarily to come out of your body, although that certainly can be a part of it. It's also about how much of your remembering you can activate in this time and space, in this incarnation of being human. And to your point, and I love the roller coaster analogy, the waking up to the fact that you're even on the ride, I think is a very
Right.
powerful, very powerful visual. And when you first do wake up to that, you're like, holy shit, I'm on the roller coaster.
So
and,
true.
and maybe there's people around me who are still asleep. And that breeds so much compassion because I also think that
Mm.
spiritual awakening, it happens, it's an infinite onion. You never get it done. It's never over. If you're expanding, I think a lot of times we think enlightenment is like, oh, we've hit
The
it,
infinite
ding
onion sounds like something I would have done to my little brother with my armpit. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Like, just, I could see myself holding him down, giving him the infinite onion.
Don't do that at home, kids.
Please do. Oh, have
Please do.
fun. But sorry, it's just I'm not mature at the same time as I'm,
No,
mature.
it makes it very fun.
So please proceed with your beautiful explanation.
Well, I was just saying that with this infinite onion, that you're constantly peeling off these layers to get to
Mm.
your core, your whole self. I really like to think of that as an infinite process because that way you don't get too tied up in where you're at on the process. Like everybody's going to be at different kind of on the different end of the spectrum, but everybody's still moving in the direction of awakening. There's this natural, I think, universal pull to wholeness. And so, whether it's in
Mm.
this lifetime or another lifetime, each one of us is going to go through that process. It's what I think is cool about meditation and spirituality is that you can do it consciously and be
Mm.
a willing participant. And that process, you can start to access, I think, so much magic And just it's a whole nother realm to start to dance with when you realize that realm is
Mm.
available to you. So I love the idea of being a conscious participant rather than kind of going through it lifetime to lifetime, but it doesn't really matter ultimately either.
I like to feel like you become something called a slider. And I just thought
Mm,
about this. Once I began to meditate, and once I began to see the disconnect between reality and people's eyes in certain moments, those that are just entranced within the human experience, I found myself becoming the slider in and out of the room, around the room,
mm,
watching people consume from within. It's amazing. Like they'll just sit there, and I was doing it too. Like you could have 10 people in a room, phones are not. People are still not in the room. They're literally thinking about what happened to them last year, last week, or what's going to happen tomorrow, or whatever. Dude, these are all things that actually do not exist in any
mm-hmm,
way, shape, or form anymore. You're literally sitting there creating a false reality in your head, ignoring everything going on around you, which, by the way, is a slap in the face of whatever made us, right? To not be paying attention and just looking inside, right?
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe that we do this. We sit in a state of non-awareness, like a fog. We're walking around in a
Mm,
fog. And I love
yeah. That's,
sliding in and out now. And, you know, I feel like my job is to drop clues when I have a chance to drop clues, right?
mhm.
Otherwise, I got nothing else to do because you're not going to convince anybody to walk a path.
Right.
You've just got to
Right.
give them keys to open up the lock that is the next one before the step onto it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I like that idea of sliding. I think of it as, I know we all have different relationships to the symbol of the cross, but I like to think of it as the horizontal dimension. I think Eckhart Tolle talks
Mm.
about this. And this is like the
Ooh,
doingness of life. This is
right.
this is the past and the future. This is within the confines of time, which is an illusion. And
Correct.
we do a lot of that in our minds. We're time traveling. We're moving into our past, which is only in your imagination at this point, in your future. And a lot of people are moving into their future through the vehicle of worry,
Worry
rather
is
than
preposterous. That's a Chinese
a
philosopher said that.
prayer for what you don't want. I can't remember who said that, but
That's so
yeah,
effing true. You're literally manifesting shit.
yeah,
Way
yeah,
to go. Way to order that. You're in a drive-through and you ordered what you don't want. Like, who
yeah,
does that?
yeah. A lot of us, a
I do
lot of
every
us do that.
day. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not great at this
absolutely.
thing called life.
Same. I'm always learning. And I do try to remind myself, worry, prayer for what you don't want. And
Love that.
oh my gosh, how your life will change when you start to orient to your future in a way that is of positive anticipation and creation. I mean, that's a
Mm.
huge, and meditation gives you the vehicle to build awareness that you even have that choice. So I think
What does
that's a
self-love
huge,
have to do with all of this?
oh, everything. Absolutely everything. It starts with self-love. It starts with being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I appreciate and I love you. And that's whatever kind of resistance you feel to that truth, that is where your work is. Whether you have
Mm.
shame or guilt, which we all do, we all have to wade through that lower chakra or lower energy system block. I don't know if I like to call them blockages, but opportunities to let more energy flow.
Well, that was your corporate side opportunities. Would like to think about the
Opportunities,
opportunities in this. I'm with you. But
cost
you're not wrong.
benefit.
They are opportunities because it's
Yeah,
such a
yeah,
cool thing to be able to clean that particular lens and get a new
yeah,
view from what you had before. So I apologize, but the opportunities, I laugh
yeah.
all the time because Gary, my co-host that comes on periodically, he always gets me for corporate speak. He gets
Oh,
mad because I say onus a lot. The onus is on you. And they're like, he's like, who the
oh,
hell says onus?
it sneaks in there.
It does.
Onus is a good one.
I love
Um,
onus.
But yeah, I think of the energy centers. I also think of having their own consciousness. So you're working with, yes, it is you, but it's also this bridge between the physical and the non-physical you. And so there's these, I think of them as little mini brains. And I don't know
Hmm.
about you when you felt Kundalini start to move, or if you don't like the word Kundalini, think of it as the gates are opening to your energy system being able to sustain more energy, more power,
It's
more
never stopped.
consciousness. It once it starts, it's never
Correct.
stopping. Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
always there at your disposal.
Hmm.
That is for you out there to figure out. Because if I tried to explain that, you would probably put me in a straitjacket because the odds are against me and who understands it. So I'm just going to let you know, go out there, have your experience, and then look at
Yeah.
what it's like to have the faucet open from then forward, and then learning how to open and close it, which is another whole battle. Right. And it can be
Hmm.
like drinking
Hmm.
from the side of a fire hydrant. Let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And as that shifts, your outer world will shift for sure because your energy is changing. And so how you interact with the world is changing. I think that's what some people talk about when this happens. Their lives dramatically change. But to your point, each person has a very unique experience. So my experience is not necessarily going to be the same as your experience or other people out there. So that's where the curiosity and the spiritual scientist concept really comes into play. Is like you're saying, go out there, meditate, see what happens, see what opens up, and you'll discover it for yourself.
Everybody's got like their own prize in their own cereal box, and no one,
Yeah,
no two people have
I
the
like
same
that.
prize. Right. What
Yeah,
happened to that? Like, why
I
don't
don't
they put like
know.
a tangible prize in a cereal box anymore? That
It was
disappoints me.
the greatest joy.
Absolutely. Like having it tumble out into your bowl. It's like you weren't allowed to stick your hand in there first, and you couldn't go get an absurd sized bowl and eat one bowl of cereal out of a box. Right.
I
There were
definitely tried
rules.
that.
You
I
had to be
definitely tried that.
civilized about it. There were rules. It had to fall into your bowl. But seriously, everybody's got their own prize in there. And what's cool is
Hmm.
they're all equally valuable. They're all
Hmm.
equally beautiful. And they're each one unique to you, just like self is. Right.
Hmm.
I think that
Absolutely.
one of the
Yeah.
biggest keys to what it is that we're discussing right now is authenticity, right? None of this happens if you are not willing to go against the status quo. And that doesn't mean against
Mm,
society. That means against the masks that you've been given over the years of your life preceding that, right? Each
mm,
one of those
hmm.
characters, each one of those different things require you to remove them one at a time and put
Yeah.
in the effort, right? But the cool thing about it is the more you remove, the lighter life gets, right?
Yes.
It gets
Yes.
so much easier to not remember shit that's not you,
Yeah. To
right?
give up and surrender those aspects of yourself that no longer apply. Yeah.
Isn't that carrying like
Absolutely.
a sack of garbage over your shoulder and complaining about the smell?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's such a liberating experience. And I think we're talking about both sides of the coin here, which is both the challenges, but also the other side of those challenges are breakthroughs and are portals that open up that you can step through if you're ready. You don't have to. And
Hmm?
just life gets much more interesting and much more magical and much lighter, to your point, I think.
It really does. I believe that all science should study religion and all religion should study
Mm,
science,
I
right?
100% agree. Yeah.
I think that we would figure out that I like to use the pizza analogy when I talk about religion. I say that it's, each religion is just a different topping on another slice and it's all pointed to the center at the Mesopotamian River Valley, that kind of thing. But if I were to take
Hmm.
religion and science, I would say that religion is the ingredients and science is the brick oven, the pan, the measurement of those ingredients and all those things. But it's still a GD pie, right?
Hmm.
It's still
Hmm.
that. but those are the building blocks that we're studying that prove that this is why this exists. When in reality, we could just sit back and watch it exist. That would be ultimately the most fun, but
Yeah. We just got
we
to
like to
figure it
put
all
our
out.
hands in things and right. I
Yeah.
gotta know why. That is the
Yeah.
question though.
I am guilty of that for sure.
That
Yeah.
is
I think
the
there's amazing
question.
things
So
happening
someone
too
like
in
yourself
quantum physics,
who
as many people are talking about, and that intersection with the science of consciousness. I mean, it's such a fertile
oh,
area right now. And,
let's
we're
talk about
having,
that.
let's talk about it. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited because now I have somebody on here that really understands this, and I
Mm,
want to kind of break this down because I think people are confused
hmm.
or they're being misled in an effort to keep them in a consumption situation, right? Versus seeing the advantages of such a plethora of technological advances that are proving both sides of the coin. But I'm curious where you see all of this going. What is
Mm.
this next step with quantum physics and the understandings behind it, or AI being able to help us with analyzing data in the background and hypothesizing at Mach 1?
Oh, yeah. I mean, AI, from the science perspective, it's always been a big data problem, always been a big data
Mm,
problem. And so now we're able to look at incredible amounts of data and pull out patterns that as humans, we just would not have been able to do. So I think you're going to see in the next decade real massive advancements
hmm
in biotech and pharmaceuticals, and how we approach disease and diagnosis and treatment. I think it's going to be completely revolutionized. And I think personalized medicine is going to become truly personalized down to your
100%.
unique genetic signature. So
Wow.
it's very exciting. And I think that's well on its way. When it comes to neuroscience and the study of consciousness, and there's been this debate for a long, long time, but is consciousness limited to the brain? Is consciousness the communication between neurons? And up until I would say probably the last, like even 5 years, the leading hypothesis or the leading theories were really centered around that being true. Consciousness is limited to the brain. But it's starting to shift
Interesting.
in the last few years. And physicists and neuroscientists are starting to have more productive conversations around consciousness not being limited to the brain tissues and to neurons. And maybe the most recent conversations are around microtubules, which are composed of tryptophan in the brain, which create a crystallized structure that create certain vibrations and frequencies in the brain that seem to be linked to consciousness because of a study they did of anesthesia. And anesthesia was affecting these microtubules and the quantum states within them. So now we know the brain can sustain quantum states in these microtubules. Previously, they thought the brain too warm, too hot, too wet to sustain quantum states. And now they're
Right.
like, well, actually, it might be possible in these microtubules. And on top of that, these quantum states might be linked to consciousness. So, more to come on those topics, but I find that incredibly fascinating and
So
makes a lot of
I
sense to
like,
me in my experiences,
we talked about that.
personal experiences
Sorry,
that
I think we got,
consciousness. Oh, did
yeah,
we
please
get?
go ahead. Sorry, we had like a small delay, but please continue what you're saying.
Yeah. But it gets me very excited that, maybe consciousness is not limited to the brain, that it is nonlinear, which lines up with my personal experiences, where it doesn't seem like that could be true.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you because once you remove time, everything kind of becomes suspended at that moment. I like to think that we're all individual fireworks, just an
Mm,
explosion in place of everything at once.
Yeah.
And it's just simply that we're walking around it and viewing it through a lens of different experience over and over
Mm.
again. Right. You know, we're talking about the advancement, we're talking about quantum physics, and a lot of people are going to get caught up in all of those terms and the minutia of what we were just saying. And I don't want anybody to be overwhelmed with the key that they pick up from this episode, right? So, what I would ask after we've heard that we are on our way, if you could give somebody an actionable item today to help them join us moving forward, or recognizing that they're beautiful in place,
Hmm.
what would that be?
Mm. It would be to follow your curiosity. I think your curiosity will
Mm,
always lead you to the right modality, the right type of meditation, the right teacher, whatever it is, learning to listen to that, the whispers of your curiosity and inspiration. Because if you're curious,
mm,
that'll lead to inspiration and you'll sustain whatever direction you're going in. I could say more practical things like start doing 20-minute meditations. There seems to be 15 to 20
nobody's going to do it.
minutes. I know. But there's a gateway, a
No.
portal that opens
Hmm.
around, once you get past those 5-minute meditations. I know. But once you do, um,
Once you get past itching,
yeah,
dude, I'm
the
serious. Like for
twitching.
me, it
Oh,
was the
yeah,
longest time. Like, oh, my nose itches or my eyebrows doing something, and you think
yeah,
most people won't get past that time frame, and they just assume that meditations are forever avoiding an itch. When in
right.
reality, that shit means nothing now. Doesn't
Yes,
exist even in the slightest, unless something legit bites me in the middle of it. I'm not going to care anymore, which is super
yes,
odd because initially you think meditation, like, oh, dude, like you're sitting there like, oh, my feet hurt. Oh, this is
yeah,
weird. Oh, I can feel my ear twitching, whatever the hell it is. And that does disappear.
it does. It absolutely does. So that can give people hope that it's not going to be this infinite itch. You will get past it.
It's not,
Um,
dude.
yeah, but follow your curiosity. Have fun with it. It doesn't have to be, you know, so serious. Although we are very serious at times about our growth. Also, like just explore, have fun, try something, see how it feels. Go
Mm,
to sound healing. Try something new. And like I said, follow your curiosity.
yeah. Throw some binaural beats in your ears.
Yeah,
Listen to, some really brilliant minds like Tolly, or,
yeah,
get in there and try the like try shamanic drumming. Maybe
yeah,
that'll resonate with you. There's no telling. There's so many different ways to access that part of self that, again, you start to kind of, like in the beginning, you find all these doors that literally open up the same room, right?
exactly.
You keep
Yes.
popping them open only to find out you're in the same room. It's beautiful, but
Hmm.
it's just another way to get in there.
Yeah.
You can get through it in exercise, meditation, in, any kind of love, right?
Hmm.
There's purest forms of love can release this kind of thing. You never
Oh, yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
But I think curiosity is probably nature's purest intuition, right?
Hmm. I
You think
agree.
about it, a
Yeah.
child is the most curious. They walk through without any inhibition. They haven't been
Yeah.
told what not to look for or what to look for yet, right? And if you don't have yourself being tainted by other people's thoughts, you're probably going to find what you will truly believe in.
Yes. Agreed. You'll find your way there.
So
Trust that.
I believe it. I believe it.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of turning the lights on, and then you can see the trail in
Yeah.
front of you. Like, oh, okay, there it is. Right.
Yeah.
Um, Before we wrap up, I want to give you a moment to tell people about your app, because we did not talk
Mm.
about that yet. And I think that's very important because that's also something that people could benefit from when they start a journey like this. And can you explain how they wouldn't be alone and what this can do for them?
Yeah. So, really, the reason I built SoulPod was for people who were on this journey. They had turned on the light of their awareness, realized they were in this journey at all, and want a little bit more structure around how to navigate it. And so, SoulPod is for people who like both the woo woo and a little bit of grounding in science as well. We have equal measures. And it's for people who, instead of a big catalog of practices, thousands of different things that you can do, we take you through a personalized experience and pair you on a path of spiritual immersion. So 30-day sets of practices. This is breath work, meditation, little mantra, some space to explore on your own. And we do this in small groups of people. So one of the reasons I built SoulPod is because it was a lonely journey for me when I was awakening.
So,
I was calling up ashrams,
so
trying to
lonely.
understand what was happening to me. Um, and there weren't a lot of people I could talk to. So that's another aspect of spiritual development that we want to support in SoulPod is connecting people who are also on a similar path as you. And you can share all the weird, the challenging, the blissful things in that community. And so we're continuing to
What,
build
tell
and
us
we're
what a
having just
pod
a
is.
blast. A pod is at least 3 to 10 people. So small groups of people who are on a similar journey as you are as far as where you're at in your spiritual development.
And how do you match them?
Secret sauce.
Secret sauce. I love secret sauce. Are we talking like, for the Whopper? Because I already figured that out. Or not the Whopper, the Big Mac. That's Thousand Island. We all know
Yeah,
that. What secret
it
sauce are we
is,
talking
right?
about?
No,
It's Thousand
we
Island, dude. Like,
it's Thousand Island. Yeah, we simply look at in the onboarding process what people might resonate with other people the most as far as where they're at.
hmm, like
Mhm.
a journey evaluation, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Journey evaluation. Are you working on maybe worthiness as your top
Mm,
kind of focus? Are you working on self love as one of your focuses? Are you working on expression, on connecting to your intuition, on just feeling safe in your body and this experience, the foundations? So there's kind of different ways that we can pair users.
Do you find yourself pairing people at times with that are at the beginning of their journey with someone that is more seasoned or has gone further into it, just for some kind of external or additional guidance or support, if you will? Or is it like all of us are thrown into Squid Games and we get to figure out who's the best in the situation?
That's funny. No, for right now it's kind of a mix on how that happens, and sometimes somebody who
Okay.
is you could call it them experienced, but they are currently working more on their foundations. Like even for me, I'm constantly vacillating between different things that I'm
Mm,
focusing on. So I think it ends up being a mix.
mm,
But in the future, I think we're really interested in there being maybe SoulPod um, could call them facilitators. I don't really like expert, but like people
mm.
who could really support these groups as we grow. Yeah.
Nice. I think it's beautiful that you have used your time on this rock to help other people find their way. So I want to thank you for that. I like
Mm,
to usually end on pointing out that we have a duty to be a lighthouse. Once we
mm,
discover our authenticity or our pure self or who we are, we should stand up and be who we are as hard as we possibly can so that
love
those
it.
around us are given the license to be themselves and they can take their cues and create their own lighthouse and show people that it's not about doing things the same. It's about having license to do things the way you were made to do it, right?
Mm, hmm.
Unapologetically be yourself. right?
Love
So
it.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you for being that, for lighting the way on all those waypoints for people to see that there are opportunities out there to grow. And you're welcome back anytime. Smartest
Oh,
woo
thank you,
woo I've
Jay.
ever sat with.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
kidding. Uh, I appreciate you so much. I see you, and
Mm.
if you've always got a seat here. Come back
Oh,
anytime.
thank you. Thank you, Jay. It's
Tell
been
everybody
so
where they
much
can find you.
fun. Yeah, absolutely. It's been so much
Right?
fun chatting with you. This was a blast. Would love to stay in touch for sure. And I
Oh, we
appreciate what
will.
you're doing with your platform and really bringing this light and this permission slip to people to explore and find their authentic self. I think
Mm,
is very powerful right now, given where we're at as a species. I do think there's an increased opportunity in our
mm.
current time for this expansion that's special. And I hope people take advantage of it. But you can find me at soulpodapp.com. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. You can find us on the iOS App Store as well. And we'd love to support
Nice.
you on your spiritual journey.
Genuinely appreciate that. All right, everybody. Remember, be cool and keep learning. Just one second.